Hey there, Emily. Hello. Hello, Curtis.
Sorry, I'm having like an audio issue.
You,
Yeah, same thing.
from me?
No, it's me. It was me.
Oh, it was you. Curtis, are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah, I have you good now. I just had that recording in progress thing blocking, so I couldn't unmute.
Oh, let's see. So did you fix that?
Yeah, it's good now.
Okay. Yeah, I record our classes because sometimes somebody that doesn't come to class wants to review it, so I put it up. And Angela, how are you doing?
Hi, Professor Robbins. I'm doing okay. How are you?
Good. Let's see, who are we missing? Victoria and Jasmine, I think. So we'll give them another minute or two, and then we will start on. How are your final projects coming along? Anybody have any work in progress updates?
Yeah, I was actually working on some stuff before, and then I worked on it a little bit today, kind of shooting and trying to figure out like um exactly how I guess actually like the not depth of field. I always get this wrong. Um Focal length, uh and like what lens I want to use.
Okay, so you're just sort of testing like different focal lengths.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did before. And then today I was kind of messing with post stuff to see if I like what how I wanted to manipulate it.
Good, that's great. Good to hear that. And Curtis, how are you doing with your progress? Oh, you went to get the cat. We're good.
I know I went to go grab some water, but I couldn't put her down. No, it's coming along pretty good. I shot the next segment because I realized I had gotten a little bit stuck on the cyanotypes for a while, which is fine because I have a couple images that I'm gonna turn in, maybe 5 or 6 from my little cyanotype experiments, and then maybe 1 or 2 from the chlorophyll process. But so I went out and I shot, thinking a little more, maybe not necessarily macro, but getting in a little bit closer to some subjects that I like, flowers and things like that, that'll still fall in line with the project's theme. And so I'll be able to pull those in a little bit here and take a look at them. But I had a nice day out at it's like the historic state orange groves out here in Riverside, because we're like huge citrus
Oh yeah,
farming place. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
So I got to spend the day in the park, just the beautiful smell of all the blooming orange trees, and
Nice.
some photos of roses and some other types of trees that I don't know, but they have purple flowers that aren't jacarandas. They have like a weird, almost heart-shaped leaf. Yeah, so it was really nice getting out and yeah, just working on my project a little bit more.
Well, that's cool. It's always fun to get out and do some photography outside.
Oh no, definitely.
So we'll have to have we'll have to schedule one of our Zoom class meetings where everybody brings their cats, and we'll have like what's the big dog show in New York? where all the owners, prance around their dogs.
Oh yeah, and I have quite a few. Usually once she's like kind of in an area, the other ones don't come by because she's a loner.
Oh really? They don't hang out together?
No, she hangs out mostly kind of by herself, or sometimes she'll just float around with one of the other cats if it's like a place to be comfortable. But we have two, she's the only girl, and we have two male cats that are both like huge, because she's only 9.5 pounds, and then they're 15 and 16 pounds. So it's just, even when they want to play with her, it's way too much.
Angela, do you have a cat or a dog?
I do not, but I have 3 little tiny puffer fish.
Okay, well
I think the cats might like that.
I was gonna say we could hold them up to put them up to the screen, and we'll get the cats looking at the screen. That could be a pretty funny time. Yeah. So how's your project coming along, Angela?
So I haven't decided what type of film I wanted to use for a part of my final. So I just dropped off some film this morning at Sammy's actually to see if I like that type of film or not. I think it was the Fujicolor 200 that I tested out.
Okay, great. That's good. That's the way to do it. Kind of test it all out before you actually go out and do the real thing, and then have some surprises when you have the film processed.
Yeah.
So that I don't know if you're familiar, like with pushing and pulling film. Are you familiar with that at all?
No, I'm not.
Because I think you can. Well, maybe you can't do it at Sammy's, but you can what we call push and pull film. So, like if you experiment with film and you're using ISO 200,
Yes.
and you wanted to use that same 200 film at, let's say, a stop more receptive, like at 400, and a one-stop difference, a faster film. Mm-hmm. When you take it to the lab, you could tell them that you want it pushed one stop. And so the lab then develops the film for a bit longer, and it's a way to experiment with different films to get different effects by either overexposing or underexposing, by then taking and having the lab either push, so extend the development time, or pull, reduce the development time. So I'm not sure if Sammy's can do that because they send it out. Probably they can, but there's labs very close by Sammy's that are in the Hollywood area. Impact Photo is the one that most professionals use, and they can customize your development. So it's sort of fun to experiment with different films on how far you can push the ISO, and then what the effects are when you push the development of it. Can get some interesting results.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I'll probably try it out.
Yeah, it's actually a lot of fun. All right, well, it looks like it's us 4 at the current time, so maybe we'll just dive in and start looking at some of your work. Did you all get a chance to upload your take-home cyanotype?
Yeah, I actually accidentally uploaded some of my take-home ones to the original, so I actually just uploaded it to the new one.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw, I just accidentally uploaded 3 of them to the in-class one, 2 of the ones that I had done previously.
Oh, okay. So why don't you pull up, if you can you pull it up, Emily?
Yeah.
And then if you haven't You can put it back, you can upload it again to the other assignment folder.
Yeah, I just did that because I saw that that was
Okay.
there.
Okay.
So it's in there. I just wanted to say that I had made a mistake, but I can pull them up.
That's okay. You got it done. So it's there. So that's the important thing. So go ahead and pull that up and go ahead and take the screen. And let's take a look. Hey, Curtis, how was your exit out of Hollywood the other day?
The exit, honestly, my brain shut off. I was just about to say it wasn't that bad, but I didn't get home till almost 5. And there was just like, there was a lot of traffic accidents and
It was crazy.
Yeah, it was not, it was so bad to that point where I was just like, I really just that I would come in for the Zoom. But the experience of getting to use those B1s and have like although I have wireless flashes here at home, they're not professional strobes.
Right.
The quality is
right.
way different. The available modifiers is way different. And
oh,
I was glad I was in class for it. So now, actually meant to do. I got the classes for these the assignments for this class like retroactively turned in now. The ones I was missing.
Okay.
So I'm working on the ones for Art of Light. And so I'm gonna have to create a micro window because our house again just has windows everywhere and they're all large, like 4 feet is the smallest size.
Okay, so Emily, this is from the coding that we did that you took home. Is that right? This is
yes.
This is stuff you did at home.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is one of the ones that I did at home. This was the first one that I did at home. And the original is actually pretty high contrast. And so I was curious to see kind of how that would work with the cyanotype. And I did end up I did about 10 minutes for the exposure time, which I probably could have gone a little bit less than that because it ended up being quite dark compared to the other one that I did, and then also the one we did in class. But I mean, it definitely turned out. I tried using a little bit of the baking soda, but I was kind of nervous to cover the whole thing in that. But I did basically the exact same process we did in class, and I used the hydrogen peroxide a little bit to kind of speed up the actual developing process.
Okay. So yeah, that turned out pretty cool. So the texture in the sky now, is that the texture that was on the actual transparency film that we were using? Because didn't that have like a little texture to it?
It did, and I'm not entirely sure if it came from the transparency film or if it's from the paper.
Oh, okay.
But I think because in the other one that I did, it also has a very similar kind of, I guess you could say, graininess. And so I don't know if that was like just part of that. But I thought it was kind of interesting. This one is definitely more of like what's the word? I mean, I guess like high contrast. There's not a whole lot of detail in either the lights or the darks.
Yeah. So the shadow details not too great, but it actually for getting like a really quick read for the shapes and the subject, that comes through pretty well. It comes through very fast.
Yeah, well, and you can even tell that like this man was wearing a mask.
Oh yeah.
With the shape of like
the
the general shapes totally came through, and even the kind of thin strands of the palm tree. So I was actually really impressed with the quality
Mhm.
of the exposure.
Yeah, that's interesting about the mask thing, because you don't see the person's nose. It's like, that's like,
Right.
that's like that'll be the icon of portraiture from these last couple of years
Yeah.
in the future.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
Because,
That's cool.
2.5, 3 years ago, if you had seen this, you probably wouldn't have even
Right.
thought about it. But now you look at it and you're like, nope, totally looks like he's wearing a mask.
Yeah. Just another day at the beach.
Yeah. And then I have another one, which I'm going to stop the share and then share
Okay.
that one because it's in a different. Okay. So this is the second one that I did.
Oh, right.
I did a little more
Uh-huh.
kind of playing around, and I used the baking soda, and it did this kind of strange cast.
Yeah.
But I thought it looked kind of cool. It added a little something interesting. I don't think it's too distracting, hopefully.
Not at all. No, that's
But I was really happy with how this one turned out.
yeah, it's really nice. And the also, having the texture outside of the image, from the application.
Yeah.
That's nice. So it's really always I like to see these different effects, from either the sponge or if you're using a brush, how it adds to the whole image. So that's definitely another part of the cyanotype message. But that turned out really nice.
Yeah, and it was kind of it was really hard for me to get this one to stay in the frame that I was using, because the frame that I had, I mean, it wasn't a printing frame, it was just a normal photo frame, and the glass of the frame isn't completely flush with like the backing.
Oh,
And
right.
so I was like trying to move it and like flip it around and whatever, and it just kept sliding. And I had already like walked outside. And so I was like, like it's gonna expose and it's gonna be weird. And I think that's kind of what this weird
Mhm.
cast stuff is. But I mean, other than that, it turned out actually really, really well. And I was very,
Yeah,
very happy that it ended up working out.
yeah, it's nice. I like that. Well done.
So
Okay.
those are the two that I did.
Okay, those are great. Really, really nice. So do you have any of the other? Do you still have some of those supplies left?
I do, yeah. I've been working like during the day, so like during the perfect time, I haven't actually been home, and so I've wanted to do more. Um, so I'm gonna actually print some of the negatives of some other photos and see how that works out on my printer, and then try and do it some more. And maybe even invest in like a UV light,
Right.
just to kind of streamline the process a little bit.
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable price wise. Yeah. Those are great. Good. Thank you. All right. Curtis, you want to take over here and let's see what kind of magic you brought.
Okay, so I have two. I think I showed you guys briefly through the screen. Let me find the screen share. But yeah, I had two different sets. I had the set of paper I coded in class, and then I had a set of paper that I took home and coded at home using the negatives. But I'll start off with the print that we did in class.
Okay.
Using the negative that I printed out. Yeah, on that paper that we use, the photo paper, which
Oh, right.
yeah, I've come to learn now that I think it's the emulsion coating that's on the photo paper that when you rinse it, it gives it. I don't know if it's maybe something with the cyanotype and the emulsion layer, but it's good to know moving forward, because there's maybe different things you could do with it. If you say like pre-rinse a sheet of paper half a sheet of paper, and then you do a print on that, and then you'll have this effect on half of it. It might be something interesting, but yeah, this is which I think you saw, that I'll show you right now, how when I took the negative home and then ended up doing another print at home, I had printed this one, which is that was just titled Mother. But yeah, so this is one of the negatives that we printed in class that I took home and left at home. But it's also,
So
yeah,
that's, so the hard line.
that's an ink line drawing I did of my
So
dog.
you did that on top of it.
Underneath it. So
Oh,
I did the
underneath it.
turmeric first, and then the
Uh-huh.
paper just looked beautiful with the turmeric. So I did a line drawing to see how that looked. And then I didn't like any of it. So then it became an experimental piece of paper. So I looked at the negative, and in the dark room, with how I told you I didn't know you could have at least subdued light, I had it completely dark. I applied the cyanotype kind of like a Jackson Pollock way almost, trying to mimic as best I can, or at least maybe in like impressionist way. Try to mimic the shape of the sunflower and the negative, so that way that would be the soul parts exposed, and it came out pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. I like that.
Yeah, I got a critique that the line drawing needs to be better, but I responded with, it doesn't matter because I like it and I know what it is. But yeah, there's actually a lot more, because this whole thing ended up coming into a crazy thing with the right here. If you can see my cursor, the lump in the dog.
Uh-huh.
That was just like a byproduct of a blind line drawing, so I wasn't looking at the paper.
Mm-hmm.
But reflecting back afterwards, the sunflower is, like I said, is representative of my neighbor anyways, and her losses and stuff. Well, she just lost her dog Django, who was my dog Sequoia's best friend. We lived next door to him, but right before, the last time I saw him, right before he passed, he had this large, he looked like he was pregnant, just a large belly. So retrospectively looking at this whole piece, I thought it was interesting that even though I wasn't looking at the paper, I ended up like kind of drawing this representative gut of Django. So
is the, like in the lower left, or like the lower left quarter of the sheet, so that's sort of, there's a shape that looks like a paw, that comes down right towards the bottom line. No, down towards the very bottom, where it's, yeah. So that looks like a paw of an animal, and the nose with an eye. So go to the left.
Oh, here.
There's the eye.
Yeah.
And then there's the nose in the darker color. Looks
I never realized, and I was just staring at the shapes today, like analyzing them, and I never picked that up.
Sort of fun.
Yeah, no, it's really neat. So I have this one, which I think I love this.
Yeah,
one. It's just a small print, like a 4x6.
That's great.
And then these ones are the prints I made of the paper that we coded in class.
Yeah, nice.
So I got a little too abstract with my coding in class. And so I couldn't really use, or I didn't feel like I could use film negative. So I took it as my chance to do like direct object printing.
Like a photogram kind of thing.
Yeah. And so, like I said last week in class, this one on the left is a sweet gum, my neighbor's sweet gum tree, which if you're familiar with the dog Archie from seeing around any of my other stuff, you might not be. Dean DeFilippo would be, but it's his dad's tree. So, and it's also the leaves from this tree that I used to make my chlorophyll prints, because it responds the best to light.
All right.
And then obviously is cyanotype of daisies in my new house. They're purple daisies or violet daisies, so they're incredibly beautiful. I've been obsessed with them. And then this last one was an experiment. I had set a shot glass on top of a grinder with the rose that I tried to experiment cyanotype on the petals. And it was interesting. And then on this left side is one of the daisies. And so it's just a soft shadow that was cast from them onto the paper, which, in like looking back now, I wish I would have flipped the paper around, just because the shape might have fitted a little better. But
maybe.
Yeah, but either way, I still think it was an interesting experiment.
Well, what's cool is that that would make a great triptych, and see how you've just sort of recorded them there, where they're floating slightly above the surface.
Mhm.
So if you put those like in a frame where they're floating,
Oh,
that
yeah.
that
Oh
would be
no,
nice.
yeah. Well, especially with this paper texture and having the wall texture and the different colors of the wall breaking in between. That's
Yeah,
actually a really good idea. And I've been trying to think of how I want to display these three because they're
yeah.
small, so they'll fit in a pretty small frame.
Because they're like 4x5, right?
Yeah. I think 4x5 or 4x6 because I
Yeah.
might have used a 9x12, so 4.5x6.
Yeah, you could do a very cool floating in a frame
Yeah,
triptych with that.
that would actually look really nice. And because even lately, conversations we've had in class, anyways, is just considering the elements where I'm displaying it. So I very consciously had them set here on this table and arranged in that fashion with the break on the bottom and stuff. So it's definitely something I got to think about whenever I put them up to display permanently.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you. And then I have lastly are the negatives I printed in class, and then I took home and coated paper at home to
Nice.
develop them. And so these are the 4 negatives, including the one for the mother print, as well as some self-portraits. I was sending you that long-winded message on Instagram.
Yeah,
I'm writing a thesis on self-portraiture, which I've come to find out I didn't need to because plenty of people have explored this concept in photography, and there's just a disconnect between the traditional art world and photography when it comes to defining portraiture and self-portraiture. But
do you know who Susan Sontag is?
no, I do not actually, or I might not, at least by name off the top of my head.
Well, I know Emily does because we studied her a little bit in one of our classes. Susan Sontag wrote a book actually in the early 1970s. It's called On Photography.
Mhm.
And you might well, if you're
The
gonna
name sounds familiar.
if you take like the history of photography class with me, or the fine art photography class, well, it's part of the class.
Okay.
But it was really controversial at the time because she's very well recognized as an academic and critique of the arts, critical of the arts, and but she was really poignant about what photography was coming to, and this was in 1973, because everybody could have a camera in 1973, and she's no longer alive, and I'm sure she'd be rolling over in her grave if she was able to be here now, writing about the lost art of photography.
Well, and that's actually interesting because I've been watching. That's what I was telling Johnny this Sunday in class. I've consumed probably in the last 10 days over 100 hours of photography conversations, like the art of photography mainly. And so it's been getting a lot into like pictorialists and that whole movement in the 1920s, and notable figures from there. Actually, some I wanted to do for my history class, but yeah, even back then they were you had the campus of Ansel Adams and others, and then you had can't think of some of the names of some of the pictorialists, but yeah, it's very interesting that the branches in school of thought on photography and where it's at now today, 100 years later.
Yeah, I love that upper right image. That's very cool how that turned out. They're all really great, but I think that upper right one is very, very unique.
Thank you. This one I finally it took quite a few times because I don't know if you remember how thin the negative was.
Yeah,
I think this might only be a 2.5 minute exposure because 3 minutes overexposed.
Turned out really good.
Yeah, thank you. I printed one also on a 8x10 canvas with that film negative strip above it. So it's a kind of an interesting T shape of the 2 negatives, but this one was my first successful print on canvas because I think the exposure time did something to where when I rinsed it, I lost all of the cyan pigments on the canvas. But because this one was so light, it just took a quick, misting of water to get the undeveloped cyanotype off, and then the print held.
No, that looks. I mean, they're all great, but that one really I think stands out.
Oh, you could probably tell too on these 3, the left 3. I use baking soda to try to bring them back a little bit, but it might have gone too far because I turned them green.
Well, I mean, there's really no right or wrong.
Yeah.
That's what's fun about it is, it's all just a creative process.
Oh yeah, and they were all overexposed too. They were very, very hard, so they needed to be brought back a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just left this extra interesting effect. Maybe I didn't wait long enough to introduce a baking soda, but maybe like too early in the rinse process, and it mixed with the leftover cyan material for this green. But
Well, I've mentioned this to you all before, but doing something like this, which is very, very creative process, you're experimenting really all the time, and you're sort of going down the path of this double-edged sword of being the creative artist, but also at the same time you're like have to be a scientist and record. If you want to duplicate the results, you have to record what you're doing. And and that becomes sort of the tedious part, is getting a journal and, writing down what your mixture was, what the exposure was, on and on and on, so that, you could replicate, let's just say like the one in the upper right. If you wanted to replicate that look on another negative, you sort of know, okay, that negative was pretty thin. You'd have to print a negative to somewhat match the density of that one, start off with, to try and get to that kind of result.
Yeah, actually,
based on, based on your mixture of the chemicals and the paper that you were using, and the application, and then of course the time under the light.
No,
but
definitely.
That's sort of the fun part about it, because it's that mixture of science and sort of the creative part. And what separates, I think, what separates a true artist from everybody out there, just, and this has to do with photography, with everybody out there, say with a phone camera, is that hopefully you can recreate things like this because you're a professional. I mean, that's sort of the difference. And it's not just, it may be luck at the beginning, because you don't know necessarily what the outcome is going to be, but because you're tracking it, then when you go back and do it again, because you've taken notes, it's really not luck. It's because you've documented it.
No, exactly. Yeah. And I've been practicing a bit more by writing on the backs of all my prints, all the information whenever I expose, when I pull them out, rinse them, and then annotate everything. Or I'll do it beforehand. If I know, say I'm going to do a set of this same image, which I think I did 3 of them. And so I just, I wrote 7 minutes, 5 minutes, and 3 minutes or something like that, or 5 minutes, 3 minutes. And one was open-ended, which I just ended up doing for two and a half. But at least the first 2 I had, visual records that of the time of exposure, and that it was a failure at least.
Yeah. Well, those are fun, very successful. Good job on that.
Well, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now.
All right. Okay, and let's see. So Jasmine and Victoria, welcome.
Hello.
Hello. And so we're just reviewing the at-home cyanotype assignment. And Angela, were you able to do any of that?
Yes, I have 3 that I submitted earlier today.
Okay, so you want to bring them up and we'll take a look?
Yes, let me share my screen.
There they are.
Okay, so this one I had printed, I want to say 3 times, because the first time I did it, I overexposed it. But I also really like the kind of like paint strokes it had on the top.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. So that's, I mean, the tonal range in that is actually really pretty interesting. The clarity, at least from what I'm seeing on the screen, it looks really, really good. It's good.
Let me open this on.
So how did you find the did you have to experiment with time-wise, as far as exposure in the sun?
Yeah, so I did a tester sheet. I didn't submit it, but I did a tester sheet, I
Okay.
guess, and then I did it for, I think it was 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes.
Okay. Huh, that has a nice feel. That has a nice look to it also with the stroke, with the ragged edges. Nice. Like that also.
Yeah, and then this last one I just kind of did for fun.
That's cute. What's your dog's name?
It's actually my friend's dog. Her name is Ginger.
Okay, cool. Nice. Those are great. Good job on that. So how did you find the process? So it looks like everything went pretty straightforward as far as, did you use any baking soda or hydrogen peroxide?
I didn't, but I still have paper and a lot of materials left. So I want to try using like leaves, and then also try using like the hydrogen peroxide and everything.
Yeah, give that a try and just sort of test it out. Well, great, thank you. All right, and Jasmine?
Yes, let me share. Okay. So these are the two prints that I made. The one on the left, they're both pretty dark. But the one on the left, I left outside in the sun for more than 10 minutes, maybe like 12.
Uh-huh.
And it came out like super dark, but the lines like coming from the top, they're palm trees.
Oh, right.
And then like the back is just like a little mountain, because I was on a hike, so I just took that picture.
Uh-huh.
I think if I had left it less in the sunlight, it would have come out lighter, but it looks cool. And then the one on the right is actually the Doheny mansion.
Oh, right. Uh-huh.
I left it out for 8 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it did come out lighter. You could see the clouds. I like the clouds like you'd see in like in the sky, because in the back palm tree you could see that like the sky gets lighter.
Yeah.
I kind of like the Doheny one better, just because it looks more mysterious. It looks scary. So
Yeah.
I just like the mood that it set.
Well, yeah, it has like up in the tower part. It looks, because it almost looks like there's lights on,
Yeah.
in the tower. So it's sort of like a night for day shot.
Exactly.
That's very cool. I think if you could try, let's say on the one on the left,
Mhm.
you could try and re-soak that, and when soak it for a couple minutes in
Mhm.
water, and then add add some baking soda, so you can
Lighten it.
you can go back and do that after, even after they're dried.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You can try that and see if that affects it at all. But actually, I sort of like both of those being dark like that, because it does give that night for, or day for night.
Yes, exactly. Because these were taken in like in the morning.
Uh-huh.
So, but with the like making it a cyanotype and going through the process, it makes it look like it's nighttime.
Yeah, very, very cool. Those are both really nice. And let's see, Victoria, I don't think you didn't have any of the materials, did you?
No, I don't.
Yeah, okay. Well, you'll catch up the next time we meet in class. I'll bring that stuff for you so that you can experiment with it. Okay, well, great, good stuff. Fun stuff. Like what you're all doing with that. All right, so what I wanted to do tonight was introduce you to some new people, photography wise, and the people that I want you to take a look at with me. I wouldn't necessarily say, well, at least with a couple of them, 2 out of the 3, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's about that they're necessarily doing really alternative kind of photo methods or photo media, but it's about their philosophy about photography and the art of photography. So that's really sort of the main direction that I would point out to you as we go through and watch a couple of the videos and look at some of the work. And so we'll go through and do that. Look at the work of Gordon Parks, Chris Burkhart, and Dan Winters. And then I'm going to give you an in-class assignment that, like we've done before, where you get a certain amount of time to go out and create a solution for the concept that I'm going to give you during class time. So the idea is that these sort of in-class assignments are supplementing what you're doing, for your final projects. So I'm not adding more work for you to do necessarily outside of class, that you can sort of devote all your time outside of class to working on your actual final projects. And actually, before we start that, let me just come back and ask Jasmine and Victoria, because when we started our class, I just sort of wanted to get an update on how your work in progress is with your final projects. Are you testing things, or are you actually out shooting? Where are you at with your final projects? So Victoria, you want to give me an update?
My final project's going well. I'm doing mine based on like my everyday stuff. I wanted it to be less staged and just take random pictures while I'm going throughout my day. So that's what I have been doing, and it's been going pretty well. And I feel like I'm looking at things differently, if that makes sense, from a different perspective.
Sure. Well, it certainly will when we, get to actually see it all. But that's, that most importantly is that you have the direction, and that's what your project's about. So, we like the concept of that to begin with. So good. So you're actively doing that now, capturing images.
Yes.
Okay, great, good. And Jasmine, how's it going with you?
So I've went through my photos, like my old baby pictures, to try and see if I can recreate them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of hard because most of my photos are either like at Disneyland or at a camping trip, or just places that are too far for me right now. So I think I might cancel that one out, but I still have my other 2 options.
Right.
So I believe this weekend I'm gonna take some self-portraits with my sister and just test it out and see how that goes. Just because she has school during the week. So the weekend I'm just gonna start shooting with her.
Okay. That's good. Well, that's good as far as, we have enough time that you can, switch out your concept. And that's sort of one of the things I wanted to give everybody enough time, so that they could sort of test the waters as far as the direction you were going in. And if that wasn't working out, you still had enough time to come back and go in a different direction. So sounds like everybody's pointed in the right direction. Great. All right. Any questions on the final project at all? Did you see my note about you'll need to create a PDF kind of document or something akin to a PDF to actually upload into the portal, for just so that I have it in the actual portal itself. You'll do the presentation of it in our class, because we'll have a class meeting, So your presentation can be any way you want it to be. So, you know, it could be prints, it could be, you know, you could bring in a band if you wanted to have music, live music, whatever it is that you want to do in class. But as far as the way that you, the way that I can get a record of it is that you'll need to post it actually into the assignment folder. So if you've got any questions about that, let me know. Okay, so let's start off by looking at Gordon Parks. Are any of you familiar with Gordon Parks, who he is?
I am. I started following the Gordon Parks Foundation Instagram page like a year ago. That's what I was telling you motivated me to want to go up to Inuvik. Also, I saw some of his work with the Inuk people up in the Northwest Territories from the 1960s.
Oh, cool. All right. Let me get this set up here for a second. No.
Two children
Oops.
with
That's not where we want to go. Hang on. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is a 10-minute or so video that sort of gives you some background on who Gordon Parks is. And we'll watch that. I won't ad lib here. We'll just go right to the video. But I will say before we started that he was extremely talented in multiple areas. So not just as a still photographer, but also as a cinematographer, as a director, as a musician, and as an artist. And he was probably one of the first, let's say, African-American photo journalist type to be really recognized, and broke a lot of barriers down in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. So he's definitely somebody that should be on your radar as far as understanding sort of the background of photography and what he contributed to the world of photography. So let's get this bumped up here to full screen. All right.
the photographer Gordon Parks. Two children with a doll. Who are they and what are their lives like? A young man walking away from us. Where is he coming from and where is he going? Armed with his camera, Gordon Parks told stories of individuals and through them of the larger world.
He had a fantastic ability to compose a series of elements within a picture to convey a sense of a story.
Philip Brookman is curator of Gordon Parks, The New Tide, an exhibition at the National Gallery of Art in Washington. Spanning the first 10 years of his career, from 1940 to 1950, it's a chance to see how a young man, self-taught and without a high school diploma, became one of the 20th century's master artists.
Parks came to an understanding, really before he ever picked up a camera, that it could be a tool for him to use to be able to express his own feelings about his life.
Gordon Parks was born in Fort Scott, Kansas in 1912, the youngest of 15 children. He credited his mother, Sarah, who died when he was 16, with giving him confidence and strength, even growing up amid poverty and prejudice. Parks spoke of his childhood in a 1997 NewsHour interview.
The disadvantage sometimes pushes you, if you use it right, because you want to rid yourself of those things that hurt you emotionally when you're coming up.
Inspired by the work of Dorothea Lange, Walker Evans, and other Depression-era photographers he saw in magazines, Parks first picked up a camera at the age of 25. In St. Paul and then Chicago, he took portraits, including Marva Trotter Lewis, a performer, model, and wife of boxer Joe Louis. He befriended and photographed leading African-American artists and scholars, including Langston Hughes, Charles White, and Lane Locke. And he did his first journalism, covering Eleanor Roosevelt's visit to a Southside community center. Parks called the camera his choice of weapons.
Gordon Parks always had a sense that that media, that the camera and photography and writing and media could be a very important tool in helping the world to understand the image of African American people. And it was through that understanding that you could make the world a better place.
In 1942, Parks was awarded a prestigious fellowship, allowing him to work as a photographer for the Farm Security Administration. His first assignment, documenting African American life in Washington, D.C., then a deeply segregated city. Among his early works, this photo of a young boy who lost his leg in a streetcar accident.
I was really struck by how intense the relationships are in the picture.
The relationships between
The relationships between the photographer and the boy, but also the relationship between the boy and the two girls sitting across the street.
Yeah.
These are things that Parks put them there for us to find.
Yeah.
And he knew he was doing them.
It was here Parks created one of his most famous photos, a portrait of Ella Watson, a cleaning lady in a government building.
I first asked her about her life, what it was like, and it was so disastrous that I just felt that I must photograph this woman in a way that would make me feel, make the public feel about what Washington, D.C. was in 1942.
The now iconic image called American Gothic after the famed painting by Grant Wood was part of a larger series on Watson, her family, and community. An extended photo essay style that Parks would go on to use throughout his career.
Parks often, he would meet people and he would talk to them. He would learn their stories. He would understand who they were, long before he would ever bring along a camera. He was able to use his own experiences and his own struggles to understand and empathize with others.
In 1944, Standard Oil hired Parks as a photographer. He would continue to hone his craft and earn his first real paycheck, traveling around the country, shooting scenes and portraits like this one of an oil worker at the Panola grease plant in Pittsburgh.
What he's done is he's created a portrait of a heroic African-American worker working for Standard Oil. This is an amazingly, technical photograph to produce. And, in a very short time, Parks has learned, the skills, mastered those skills.
He photographed white fishermen and farmers, Black pilots training for war, and he continued to break barriers. In 1949, he was hired as the first Black staff photographer at Life magazine, where his photo essays included one on a Harlem gang member named Red Jackson. He also traveled internationally, shooting high fashion spreads in Paris, and celebrities like Ingrid Bergman in Italy. In 1950, he returned to his childhood home in Fort Scott to shoot a series for the magazine. And all of this was just the beginning. Parks would go on to write several memoirs and novels, to direct films, including Shaft and an adaptation of his book, The Learning Tree, and to compose music while continuing to work as a photographer.
He never understood that he wasn't supposed to do it. He just did it.
Gordon Parks died in 2006 at the age of 93. The exhibition Gordon Parks, The New Tide is on through February 18th.
That's not this year. Sorry about the Joe Biden insert. So what were a couple of things that you heard in that from Gordon Parks, or that was said about Gordon Parks, that might stick with you? Anything stand out?
Definitely like the attempt he made at creating like intimacy with the subjects or getting to know them beforehand. And so that way, from other things that I've also seen on him, it built a level of trust between him and the subject that allowed him to capture some like photos that other photographers couldn't get because they didn't have the same relationship.
Right, that's a really good observation. Anybody else?
And he was able to do more than one thing than be a photographer. He was a director, composer, but all while doing all those things, he was still a photographer, still taking photographs. So I think it just gives attention to not only being in one subject, but just knowing that you could do everything at the same time.
Absolutely, that's a great point. So, and I think it's no matter where you are in your career, whether it's at all of your point or from my point, it's a continual reminder. Just don't be closed off and obsessed with one particular point of view. And I think he was such a Renaissance person that wanted to have this, or had a curiosity about these other creative fields. That I would really recommend looking at this film called The Learning Tree. Have any of you ever heard of that or seen it? So that's like it was said, it was an adaptation from his book, and I can't say for sure, but I think it was actually nominated for an Oscar at the time. But it's a beautiful film. Any other observations? Well, put him down in your resource, as somebody to investigate a little bit further, because it'll certainly help you be inspired with your careers in whatever direction it takes. He was just a marvelous creative person and a human being that really did some absolutely amazing images and influenced 2 or 3 generations of creative filmmakers, photographers, etc. Really wonderful career and human. Okay, our next person that we want to look at is a fellow by the name of Chris Burkhardt. So hang on one second and let me get that here for you. And so Chris Burkhardt, this is from his website, and I would put him in somewhat the category of alternative photography, as far as media and methods, because as you can see, he works in very extreme conditions, and I would probably say even at my 100% physical abilities as a photographer, I don't think I would have done half the stuff that he did. So he works out of actually Pismo Beach in Central California, and he travels all over the world shooting extreme conditions. So he's known for extreme sports photography, but also just extreme conditions in weather and all sorts of other obstacles that he encounters. But in connection with that, he is a masterful photographer as far as just the technical aspects of understanding light, the use of the proper camera equipment for whatever the situation is, and then the aesthetic values of lighting and composition. And you can see by some of the imagery how he consistently will have a person in a frame that gives the proportionate size to the setting in the natural setting. And so it's sort of this constant message about how small we are as humans in Mother Nature. And his emphasis on that is absolutely wonderful. So none of this is like this image this is not photoshopped. So this is, he runs with a lot of very extreme athletes, and they go on these adventures that are sometimes very inaccessible So it takes them days or weeks even to get to a particular location. And they, trek in with their backpacks and equipment, and then they'll set up, like in this case, a person that's walking on a rope. He has to figure out, where the full moon is going to rise from, the time of day, so that he gets some detail in the foreground, and what equipment to use as far as getting the moon up to a proper size focal length wise, using the right kind of lens. And, his imagery is just really stunning. So he was one of the first photographers that traveled to the Arctic. And I'm not sure if this is in the Arctic, but he's been there. I'm not sure about this particular image, with a group of surfers, and captured surfing in the Arctic. So that's about as extreme as you can get for both the subject that you're photographing and yourself as a photographer. So one of the reasons that I'm bringing him to your attention is mainly that he's picked a subject matter, and he shoots other things, but he's picked a subject matter that we could classify as alternative, that it's very unusual, where he juxtaposes the human versus nature. And then you can see, like with this image, his timing and execution is incredible. So a shot like this, he's in the water himself. And this is, you can obviously see, pretty cold conditions. So I don't see any of the photographs here from the volcano that erupted. When was that? Like 6 months ago in, was it Iceland? Any of you remember that?
Oh, I think I do know which one you're talking about. Another photographer I follow, I think, was there.
So he's been to Iceland many times, and so he flew over to photograph the volcano. And I'm not sure if there's any images on the site here yet. Let's go back here. So he makes his living shooting commercially, but also produces his own books and prints. So he's a very, very successful business with, I'll let you peruse this yourselves. I'll post the links from what we're looking at tonight. So he does workshops, he sells and produces books, and then does prints. So both limited edition prints, and then like interior designers use his work a lot. So he does a lot of this kind of work where it's aerial, looking down, so it becomes fairly abstract. And if we could see one of these images like that, there's usually an airplane, like a plane that you would see of a opposite color, complementary color. He uses this yellow plane a lot in a lot of his aerial photography. I'm not seeing any of this is actually, so this is actually from about 2,000 or 3,000 feet up in the air. Oh, here's one with the plane. Oh, here's the volcano. Pretty amazing work. Beautiful. Okay, what do you think about Chris Burkhart's work? Anything stand out to you about it?
I'd say definitely that juxtaposition of scale is really interesting, especially once we started seeing some of the shots of aerial shots of the planes over the landscape was really interesting because typically when you're thinking of aerial shots, you think you're in a plane, but then to see one and then to see it on such a small scale across the backdrop, and it just adds a whole nother element that's really interesting too.
Yeah, and it's also a really good technique for no matter what kind of photography that you're utilizing, is that whole thing about scale, is that juxtaposition of subject matter, in his case, human to Mother Nature, and then also getting that emphasis by using scale. So that's something we can apply to a lot of different kinds of subjects that you might be photographing. All right, and then our last person that we're going to look at for tonight is a fellow by the name of Dan Winters. So let me get that set up here for you. I have to share the screen for you to see it. That would be helpful. Okay, so we'll watch a little video about him first.
I think, my devotion to photography comes from a real passion for creating imagery and for, creating a document of our time. I started out as a newspaper photographer doing photojournalism in California, and I really started to understand the importance of the still image with regards to the ability to study that sort of moment that wasn't fluid, which is how we experience people when we experience life fluidly. I think basically just because I like to communicate. I had an interest in World War II since I was a kid, and it was very common when I was a kid to encounter World War II veterans. And I started to really have an appreciation for the sacrifice that they made and the devotion that they made and the sort of conviction. And I really started to love mid-century, 20s, 30s, 40s America. And my love for Americana, for want of a better word, would stem from, my experiences principally here in the States growing up, kind of being intrigued by the history of the U.S. always, and the diversity that we have, the difference between the urban setting and the rural setting. I think, the work documents both, trying to create a document of something that is fleeting, as we move more into the technological age, those people that we study are changing and are disappearing. And I really like the idea of kind of creating a solid document of that period and that subject matter. I think the idea of really honing a sensibility rather than focusing on a style. First of all, I think for me, it allows me to have a very diverse subject matter that I'm able to interpret. Oftentimes, stylistic approaches tend to be more along the lines of the technical pursuit, and they depend on certain circumstances in order to exist. Perhaps film, camera, lighting, setting, I think when I decided that at one point I decided I wanted to focus on portraiture principally. Early on, it started to feel really limited to me and limiting. And what I tried to do early on is to develop an internal dialogue so that I could start to be mindful of what I was reacting to and try to incorporate the way I was reacting to things into the work. And over time, really focus on trying to increase the diversity of the subject matter that I would work with. People aren't going to remember the things you do. They're going to remember how you made people feel. And I've always tried to really adhere to that and try to be, kind and gracious and appreciative. I think if I stopped taking pictures right now, it's going to take me much of my life to put together and put the images that I've already made out there. I still actively shoot quite a lot for myself, and I've shot, thousands of rolls of film of personal work, and I've exhibited that work, and I'd like to do a lot more with that. I've been doing a project on honeybees that I'm very proud of, and that I'd like to continue. And basically, just image making in general is such a part of my life, and I think it's definitely going to be my life's work. Even long after I retire, I'll still be dabbling in photography.
All right, we're going to look at some of his work here in a minute from his website, but I wanted to just sort of see what your take was on his philosophy. So anything stand out to you from what he said?
I was gonna say, I think like Gordon Parks too, it's his flexibility on like mediums and the way he interprets things is really nice. But it also, I thought it was funny because you could kind of tell while he was saying it, but he'll still be shooting photos even after he retires. Is always just like, well, do you ever really retire? Maybe from like a professional where you're getting commission jobs for things that maybe you don't like to do, and then you get to the point where you can just solely do what you want to do and probably still make money residually off of it.
Well, that's a whole interesting discussion that I've had with some of my peers that I grew up in the business with. That because I don't believe as a photographer you actually ever retire. You might retire from the business of photography. I mean, I would probably say I've maybe shoot for clients now 3 or 4 times a year compared to 15 years ago where it was 5 or 6 times a month. 60, 70 jobs a year with lots of production. But I've had a couple of friends that I grew up in the business with that actually did retire. And one of my very good friends, I remember him telling me that he was going to retire. And well, how do you retire as a photographer? You don't retire. At least I don't think so. You might, like I said, stop doing business per se, but the act of being a photographer, I think, is a lifetime career that you're always looking for pictures. You're always looking for those special moments. I think he probably states that in a really eloquent way, and his work absolutely shows that. At the height of his career, we'll look at some of his portraiture. He was shooting for like Vanity Fair, like the Oscars. They would build a set off the stage, and they did this, like on Sunday night. All of the award winners go to now Mark Seliger, if you know who he is, does this now where the award winners go to a set that's been built, and get their portraits taken. Well, he did that for quite a few years, and his work was just totally outstanding. But he segued away from that and got into many other experimental types of photography through his, wanting to be thinking differently. And so I still go back to the fact that, if you're a true photographer or in any creative medium, I don't think you really ever retire. And he's definitely lived that life. So let's go to his website here. Pull that up. So we'll look at some of his people work. There's his V. And when we look at, let me just pull a few of these up. There's a masterful lighter, and as far as understanding light and how to convey a feeling with light, and through juxtaposition of propping, recreating sort of like a Norman Rockwell kind of look. Morgan Freeman, the actor. So I think this is one of his Vanity Fair. So what he's doing now is, this was one of the sets that he built for one of the Oscar shows. I guess it was for the New York Times Magazine. What he's doing now is he gives a lot of workshops, does a lot of workshops, and also inspirational kinds of videos. But one of the things that I wanted to show you, as far as coming from the same person, he developed this category of constructions. So these are, as you can see, completely opposite in concept to his portrait work, but really having an understanding of design and technique to create unique kind of works in a really very conceptual mind. So I would say he is really truly a photographer's photographer because of how he is able to be a real critical thinker. Well, these are all just fascinating subject-wise. Let's see. You can see some of his tear sheets here. So this is, it's always interesting when we see somebody's very creative work and then see how that's interpreted through advertising, where they hire a very creative person, to produce work that I'm not going to say mundane, but in some ways is somewhat ordinary. And that's the world of advertising, because it has to go through so many layers to get approved that it's very difficult to let a creative person just go out and operate on their own in advertising as a photographer. So like in this example, I would say that all of you, given the chance, could produce a photograph like this with maybe a little bit more experience. So it's not, when I look at tear sheets like this, and even work that I've done, it's not utilizing the creative brain of the photographer in this case, the creative person, to the maximum, because this was approved, by the client through the advertising agency. And literally, this was probably either illustrated on a piece of paper for him to abide by. The person is going to be in this position. You leave room for the type up here. We want this prop over here and this prop over here, and put some nice light on it. And as you've seen, he's a much deeper thinker than that. But, that's part of the advertising business. This obviously gets a little bit more creative in the lighting. It's always interesting to see how advertising agencies sometimes default to the very safest kinds of work, no matter who they hire. Okay, any observations on Dan Winters, on his work or his philosophy? Again?
I was going to say, I did notice on his commercial work, I didn't get to see, because the thumbnail was so small, what movie it was from, but he had a photo of the spacesuit and kind of just a white background.
Oh, right.
I was reminiscent of his work in the construction series that he did. So that's where, when I saw that photo in the thumbnail, it looked like a bit of that, at least that straight down perspective of something similar to what he was shooting in those series.
Yeah, so it does happen where somebody that creative does get hired to create something that is unique, and that can be depending upon the agency. So advertising agencies are sort of divided into two categories. One is like a very large corporate kind of advertising agency, and then the other side of that is what we call a boutique agency, which has a very tight creative group. And the boutique agencies have a reputation for hiring creative people, photographers, filmmakers, to actually utilize their creative abilities. And the mainstream advertising agencies hire you because they know that you can produce the work that their client has approved. And so you're getting things that have already been pre-approved, and you're basically following what's been laid out. So a lot of times when I've been hired by agencies like that, I'll shoot exactly what they want because that's what they're paying me for. And then go off script after I've accomplished that and shoot something that is unique, at least to me. So examples of that would be, I shot a lot of work for, there's a Slim Fast. You know that product called Slim Fast? Very commercial product, for losing weight. And I would be hired to shoot a lot of celebrities they used back in the middle 80s and into the 90s, that they would use celebrities that were somewhat overweight, and then they would pay them like $100,000 to lose 40, 50 pounds in the next 6 months, 7 months. And then I would photograph them after they lost the weight. So an example of that would be, I shot a bunch of them, but one would be Tommy Lasorda, who was, the manager for the LA Dodgers. And at the height of his career, he was probably, like 80, 90 pounds overweight. And so they had him on a contract, and I photographed him before he lost the weight. And then again, after he lost the weight. And they just wanted basically a document to show him before and after. And when he came back after the weight loss, I had a whole different setup to shoot with him with different dramatic kind of light after I shot what the agency wanted me to do. And, he loved that photograph. And I would do this with a lot of the people I photographed, make more dramatic kinds of photographs for them rather than the very straightforward commercial look that I was being hired for. And I would make them prints of that and, send them a print of that version, which they always got lots of good feedback from. So that's one of the things in the commercial world of photography that was an eye-opener. Was that when I started in the business, I was really thinking, okay, this is going to be a very great creative trip. And what I found out was that advertising can be one of the most conservative businesses out there because of all of the different layers of approval something has to go through when in advertising, because they're spending so much money for it. Okay, any questions on any of the people we looked at this evening? All right, so let's move to what I am putting out here for you to do this evening, which you can do either on a cell phone, Polaroid camera, whatever you want to use. But it's more about the concept. And let's just sort of look at the word that I want you to interpret visually. Where did that go? It's this one here. Let me try that again. There we go. Okay, so the word is reflection. And here is the definition of reflection: the throwing back by a body or a surface of light, heat, or sound without absorbing it. Well, that's the dictionary version of it. Or we can read over here, but reflection is the change in direction of a wave front at the interface between two different media, so that the wave front returns into the medium from which it originated. Common examples includes the reflection of light, sound, or water waves. All right, so that's gonna really tweak your brains. Let me show you some examples that I just pulled really quick because I want to show a lot of examples, but we'll give you some starting basis. So what the assignment is to shoot a reflection. And obviously there's innumerable ways that you can do reflection. So this is a glass of water that I just put out in the patio and photographed. And it's very objective. But then when we go to look at the next page, that becomes more abstract. So in a sense, this is somewhat combining some of the things that we've already done in this class before, previously, concepts that we've done before, at least in this particular solution. So this is, one way that you might go. We'll look at some other examples. So this is something that I did, but these are not. These are things that I just pulled. So reflection, using more of a concept about a broken mirror with a background reflecting back into the person. So this becomes a little bit more insightful. Or we can look at, a pair of glasses reflecting the city, and it gives a different perspective on it. This could be a self-portrait, or it's a portrait of a person with using the reflection of the person becomes more insightful. Or the last example down on the bottom, just using it as a pattern, capturing the light and color composition. So there's many different ways that you can go out and capture reflection. So let me stop the share. So that's really what I want you to do over the next 45 minutes. So we'll come back at 7:45 and take a look at your solutions for that concept of reflection. Any questions?
Are we shooting right now or researching?
Yes.
Okay.
As soon as we've got any questions answered. So no research. Well, your research will be included in your 45 minutes. So the idea is to come up with a unique image in the next 45 minutes that solves this visual problem of capturing reflection. So the things that I showed you went from being very objective to being more subjective. Does that make sense?
And it's just one image. I mean, obviously we can take a bunch, but
Yes. I mean, as much as you want to, variation wise. But the point of it is that we want to see like stuff that we look at that you just go, wow, that's great. And it does, and the viewer wouldn't necessarily know, oh, that was an assignment for reflection because of the way you've approached it. That's the direction you're taking. The viewer that sees it, we're all going to know what it's for, but the viewer that sees it, we want to have them be sort of bowled over by what your solution is. So any kind of post-production you want to use, cropping, any kind of camera format, whatever it is you want to do. And that's what becomes difficult about this, is trying to do that within a given period of time to come up with a fantastic interpretation. Okay, so we'll have you sign back on at 7:45 and go through what you come up with.
Sounds good. See you guys in 45 minutes.
All righty. So you guys can just sign back in. Hey there, Emily.
Hello. First person back.
Yeah, you have 4 more minutes if you want.
Still sitting here doing homework, so.
Well, we'll have you go first.
All right. Perfect.
Did you watch the Oscars on Sunday night?
I didn't watch it. I was in class, but I did look at everyone who won. So
Hold on, can you hear me?
You're breaking up a bit.
Hold on. Okay. Did that work?
Oh yeah, that's a lot better. What'd you
Yeah,
do?
my Wi-Fi here is very spotty, so sometimes it doesn't work. I did not watch the Oscars because I was in class, but I did look at everyone that won. Um,
What class do you have in the afternoon? And that was Sunday afternoon, yeah.
yeah, so I'm taking the sound design class, which is the one
Oh,
my dad teaches.
well, that's good.
So I was doing that. Um,
Does he give you a good critique?
he does. He's really good about that kind of stuff. I think he's a great teacher,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the dynamic is fine. And it was so funny. It took until last class for anybody to say anything about our last names being the same.
Figure it out.
Yeah, I was so surprised. Somebody was like, "Hold on a second, are you guys related?" I was like, "It only took what, four class
Yeah,
sessions for somebody to
exactly.
notice."
That's funny.
But they were cool about it. Nobody was worried. So
Yeah. Well, you know that I think I don't know if I told you or not, but you know when Cara went through school at
Mhm.
Brooks when I was there, that was always funny when she was in one of my classes, and there was literally people for the whole time that she went through school with, you know, like 2.5 years,
Yeah.
that it wasn't until graduation, because I was on the stage for graduation as the chairman,
Mhm.
and you know got to give her a hug when she when she
And
came.
they're like, "That seems weird."
And some people hadn't figured it out until then. That's your daughter.
You're like, "No, I just like to hug one specific student
Yeah,
sometimes."
yeah.
Special treatment.
It is. Yeah,
That's funny.
there was some funny things. There was even like other faculty. There was like this one particular faculty member that didn't that wasn't full time.
Oh.
That it took her, I think, about a year to figure it out.
Oh, wow.
And when Cara finally was in her class and did the, you know, so, and the instructor asked her, are you related to Bill? And she said, you know, very sheepishly, oh yeah, he's my dad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and Robbins is a relatively common last name.
Yeah,
Thwaites isn't common at all.
no,
So,
that would be pretty hard to pass that one up.
yeah.
Well, it's fun though, I think, you know, because you get to see your dad in a different perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, he's always kind of been a teacher
Yeah,
for me, and he's always been very good at kind of switching between the like father mode and teacher mode, but still being very like loving and supporting about it, which is really nice.
yeah, he's definitely that's who he is. So doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
That's very cool. All right, so we've got Curtis and Jasmine back. So we're waiting for Victoria. And so two more people. Okay, we'll wait we'll give them another minute and then we'll start. See what kind of surprises you brought in. So Curtis, I just saw your Instagram story.
Which one? Do you
Oh,
know?
well, I think you just posted it. It had your cyanotypes on it.
Oh yeah, no, I did the story with the music to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Oh, thank you. I was sitting there earlier, kind of just looking at him and thinking about him. And that song from Modest Mouse came to mind, so thought I'd put it on there with it.
I saw your post with your final from with Johnny. You know, you posted your image.
Oh yeah.
Was it, so did you do much post production on that, or was that pretty straight?
No, just a tiny bit of post production. It was just like a little bit to bring down some hot spots, just to make them less stand out as much, and then brought down like the chair in the back because it was a little distracting. Very minor things, and then a quick like just a rotation to make sure that everything was kind of aligned.
Oh, that looked good. Looked really nice.
Oh, thank you.
Nice feel for the light.
Oh, thank you. There's definitely some. It's tough because, like I said, I was telling you in class, I sit in that chair, and so that's a perspective I always have, and that's why I want to shoot a photo of that perspective, anyways. But I don't feel like caught it exactly as I see it, but it's okay for being like a quick in class assignment or shoot it. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, that's good. All right, well, I think we'll get started. So Emily, you want to go ahead and take the screen and let's see your solution for
All
reflect.
right. So I'd had an idea, and unfortunately, I do not have the I didn't have the tools in order to do it. So this is kind of a makeshift version of that.
Okay.
But this is what I did. So does anybody know what this is?
Wow.
Looks like a inside of an orchid.
It is the inside of an orchid. My mom loves orchids. And so I was like going around the house. I was like, what can I take a picture of? And then I was like, orchid. And I have I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's kind of just like this, like a crystal ball. It's just essentially it's a glass ball that kind of, you can reflect things through it. And I was like, I want to use that, but I don't have it at my mom's place. It's at my dad's. So I used a round kind of glass, I don't know, it's kind of like a bowl sort of thing, and I filled it with water, which essentially does the same thing.
Right.
And so the lighting wasn't great, so I had to do kind of a fair amount of post work to try and get the colors right. But this is kind of what I came up with.
Okay. Have you that you brought up the glass ball? Have you seen some photos that people have used that with?
I have. When I first got it, I was like, how on earth do you use this? And because my mom got it for me for my birthday, she was like, I don't know, I figured you could figure out how to use it. And so I looked up a bunch of stuff, and I mean, it's kind of incredible how some people the vision that people have using it. I still have a little bit of work to do with kind of understanding how it works, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen some really beautiful work done with people that are really into that glass ball. Really, really incredible. So, so what do you think of your results?
I'm as happy with it as like I could be. I think if I was in a situation where I either had artificial lighting that I could use, or it was, lighter outside, I could use like a big window, it maybe would have turned out a little bit better. I also didn't have any sort of stand to either put my camera on or to hold up the I guess the reflective object. Yeah, so
what did you do?
So I used my sister. My sister held it up. I like perfectly positioned it, and I was like, just stay there. And then I was I had to shoot handheld, so it's not as crisp as I probably would have wanted it to be, but considering the circumstances, I think I mean, it turned out cool, and it definitely got the point across of reflection.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also, part of this, these types of assignments that we do in class within a certain given period of time to try and express a concept, is very realistic to something that could happen on assignment, where spontaneously you have somebody that you're working for that has a different idea from what you've started off shooting, and you have to adjust to it and make it happen. So that's all part of the engineering of a shot that comes under those kinds of circumstances, where everything isn't ideally time-wise put together. So it's sort of boils down to trying to do what you can do with what you actually have. So I mean, I like it because I like your color palette with it, and it could be, I could see this being used like and you remember from our art director's class how we would put editorial articles with imagery, and I could see this with being used like in a publication or online or print, like in Psychology Today, with an article about brain interpretations, something, very conceptual.
Yeah.
So, I think it accomplishes what I wanted you to do, which is, have to think about something and without too much planning, and just use whatever objects you could find within the given time and come up with something that is unique. So, I think you got that. You got that done.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Curtis, you want to pull up yours?
Yes, one second. Let me get the screen share going. Screen share. Okay. Ooh. Oh, okay, here they are. There's just no thumbnails for it. So I shot a couple of them, but this is one of the first ones that I had the idea of. I just thought it was a little bit interesting to have myself singularly in one reflection, and then in double in the other reflection. Because I had to use the restroom right after we got out of the class, so that was the first thing I saw when I walked in there, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take a picture of this.
Interesting.
Thank you. Next one I have, because I did two with mirrors, and then I did two different ones that are a little different. But this is the next one I have for reflection through the mirror. But yeah, so we have a mirror that's on the wall that divides the landing from the upstairs and downstairs, I guess.
Wow, that's good. That's very interesting as far as the composition, how the space is divided up.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because it looked like a photo. So I had to do some perspective tweaks because I was shooting down at a square object. So I had to, pull out the bottom a little bit and then adjust it to get it to look square. But yeah, so we constantly have our dog where my girlfriend's standing. We have our dog sit there, and then we go up the stairs to where our cat's sitting right here. And then she's like going crazy trying to see where we're going. And then we hide, and then she's got to come run after us. So there's another one I knew wanted to shoot a photo of. And then I have this one, which is just, my girlfriend getting into the pantry reflected off our sliding glass window. So I'm shooting outside. That's where this white line is the fence that, between our yard and our neighbor's yard. And then, yeah, it's her and our house plants and stuff, the kitchen counter and refrigerator and stuff. And then one more in like that same concept was just like a self-portrait. But I used my girlfriend's phone to just light up my face and shot outside.
Okay, well, let's see what some of your classmates think as far as what might be the reader's choice, let's say. Anybody have
I
Yeah.
really liked the second one, I like that it's like a family portrait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A fun take on a family portrait.
It's funny because there's a second alternate one of this where my girlfriend's facing the other way. So in the little mirror that's all the way back there where you can see like kind of her arms and her waist area, it was just her butt and the dog was standing next to her, but the dog's head was covered by her. So it was just the dog's butt. So it's just both their butts in this tiny mirror. And she was giving me a funny look over her shoulder. And it was the same basic setup, except for it was both their butts in a little mirror.
That's funny. I also really like the last one. I think that's a really, really fun take. I love when I think reflection is such a great tool for self-portraits, and I think that you really captured a really interesting one because it's you, obviously, a self-portrait, but it's also kind of shows your space, where you live, kind of, and it feels almost like reflective in like an emotional sense.
It's
so
very that's
think
where I
it's really
stand
cool.
looking at the sunset and at myself in the reflection and disgust most of the time, almost every day. So definitely picked up on that, I guess there.
So Jasmine, what would be your choice?
I think they're all great. I think I really like this one and also where the plants are. I kind of like all of them. Yeah, that one. Because that one is like trippy. You could just feels like we're in like 3 different dimensions. Because like there's 2 of your girlfriend, and then there's 2 of the stickers of the A and the P. And I don't know, that one makes me feel like a memory. This one's kind of like a memory that I would have in my mind. Like if I were to see flashbacks, this is how I would see it, like in this format. And
Okay.
the lighting is, I'm like, you probably didn't do much with the lighting, but it looks kind of like it'd be like in a crime mysterious like flashback or something like that.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
But yeah, I really liked all of them. I feel like it's a reflection, like it's a reflection, but also like we get to see inside, like a little portion of you and your home.
Great. What, Angela, you have any particular one that shines out?
I would say the one where like half of your face is showing, just because I like how it's really like mysterious and you kind of like, you have obviously like questions about the photo, like there's a lot going on and there's a lot to look at, but it's also like really simple and pleasing to the eye at the same time.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you.
Well, yeah, I think it's an interesting collection because the from just let's just say style wise, the one of you on the second one where you're on the stairs, where everything is really the perspective is very flat, even though you're going from one layer to another layer down below to a layer above. So there's a lot of depth to it, but yet optically it's very flat. It's almost like an illusion because where the stairs go down, that space that's above there, that negative space, that even though we know that wall goes back and then the wall returns towards the staircase, it actually just looks almost very flat. So it's an interesting contrast to like the next one and your last one, which are very spatial, and partly because of the opacity or the transparency. How this end and the next one, the layers are not flat. So it's really sort of a complementary to each other. Really interesting how you put those together.
Oh, thank you. It started off with the first photo I shot was of one of the like negative slides, how they're super reflective. So it was reflecting outside as it sits on my computer table, and it's on a glass shelf. So you get the reflection of just light on the glass shelf, but you had the more defined reflection on the roll or the strip of film but you could see through it, the opacity, so you can see the keyboard. So that's kind of where it started sparking, like, because even in these ones, as you said, how it's spatial, it's you really are, you're getting 20 feet behind me plus 20 feet in front of me in the same photo.
Yeah.
And represented on the single plane that's immediately in front of the camera. So it obscures it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're all good interpretations of the use of reflection.
Oh, thank you.
But different, from each other too.
Oh, thank you.
Good exercise.
Hey, I'm gonna stop sharing real quick now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, and Jasmine, you want to bring yours up?
Yes. Let me see. So I also took a variety of photos, kind of like in the same space where I was. This is just a big, like, I don't even know what it's called, but it's one of those big mugs that looks like those glass mugs that you'd put like beer into. It's just one of those big giant cups. And I just have oranges and limes in my little fruit basket. So I love this one just because this is the same orange. Like this is the same orange, this is the same orange, and this is the same one. Just we get to see 3 different variations of it. So like the front, the right, and the left. So I just thought that was cool. Then I just took different shots just because I think this one is just kind of like, this one is the most like basic one. And then I decided to take like half of the cup, but also the real like fruit that's behind.
Yeah.
This is the same lemon as this one, but it looks like there's 2 different ones, so they're the same. Then over here, this is a different lemon, and I liked how the shadows cast. Like you can see the vibrance of the lemons and the orange. This is like one of my favorite ones because also you can see the glass, the reflection of the glass and the light on the glass. I was doing different photos with flash and no flash. So I believe this one was with flash and the first one was without flash.
Yes.
So I kind of liked how I did this one with the flash.
Yes.
This one was also flash, and I know you can see my phone, which is like a reflection, but I just wanted to see how it would look if I pointed down the cup. And this is filled with water, so this does have water in it. Even though it doesn't look like it has water, so that kind of was like messing with my head also, even though I had taken it myself. And I just like how like fish-eyed it looks. My phone looks huge, even though it's not that big. And then my last photo is kind of like the same as my first one, just with the lemons instead of oranges. I wanted to see like how different it would look with orange and yellow. And this one also has flash. So after my tries with the flash, I loved my photos with flash than without flash. So I was just like experimenting with my flash on my phone.
Yeah. Nice. So let's see what so your classmates where they stand with what you did. Anybody have an opinion or observation, feel?
I think they're all super, super cool, but I really like the third one where you can see the reflection of your phone in it, because it warped the lenses of your camera on your phone, and plus the light from the flash on the phone, it looks like. It just it looks really interesting. It reminds me kind of 2001: A Space Odyssey. And then the rest of it is almost like reminiscent of I think it's called a cupola for like space stations and stuff, the bubble windows. It's just really interesting.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Emily, do you have a favorite there?
Yeah, I really like actually the first one, and I think it would be really cool if you like cropped into it even and kind of cut off like the like where there isn't any of the fruit, and like just kind of cut into like I guess the panels. I think that could be really interesting, and kind of because you can still kind of see that it's the outline of the cup, but if you cropped into it, like you would have no idea how you got that. And I think that could be kind of like an interesting look.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was actually thinking of that when I saw this, like wanting to crop in, but I appreciate the feedback because I was also thinking that. So I love how we just have the same like vision.
And Angela, you have a favorite?
Yeah, I definitely like that this first one just because it also kind of like when Emily was saying like if you were to crop it, it kind of reminds me of like the mirrors in like a fun house, kind of like at a carnival.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I just kind of like that effect because you can't tell if it's really like if it's concaved or not.
It's really interesting. So the second one, the one with your flash, that's the one I'm drawn to. And it reminds me a little bit of, I just looked him up because I wanted to see his work again. A photographer who shot flash on camera of just everyday objects and in color. And William Eggleston, I don't know if anybody's heard of him, but he was the first photographer that at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in the 70s, I think it was the early 70s, that had color photography, very mundane, banal subject matter. And it was sort of like a landmark time for the Museum of Modern Art in New York that they took pictures that took images like this that he did and flash on camera and did this whole show for him in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And it was very controversial because of the subject matter and then also the fact that he was just using flash on camera. And he would shoot things like shoes under the bed. But the quality of what the photography looked like, this sort of reminded me of his work. I think it's really very interesting, the way that the flash worked and how the reflections work. I love that image. That's great. Really nicely done.
Thank you.
I like your concept. I think your concept is good, and your exploration of trying it with and without flash, I think is great too. But this immediately reminded me of Eggleston's work. So we'll see this up at the LA County Museum of Art.
Thank you, everybody. I'm gonna have my exhibition soon.
Yes, very good. All right, Angela, you want to share yours, please?
Yes, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so I used my phone camera to take this photo of my little sister brushing her teeth right now, just because she like happened to be in the bathroom and that was like the only mirror I could find at the time. And I said, this is perfect. I'm gonna use you.
Nice.
Yeah, so then this is the one that I took on my phone, and then I have a Polaroid like printer. So then I wanted to print both of them. So one of them in black and white, and then one of them just like in color, just because I thought that'd be super interesting to have both.
Okay, so classmates, what's your take?
I think the physical print on the Polaroid looks so cool, and especially how you have them set next to each other with that shadow line in between. There is a tangibility in physical prints that you can't really like match, but it looks so cool. Seeing the first image already was pretty interesting, but then seeing them as these Polaroid prints was very, very cool, especially that color in black and white next to each other is interesting.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Anybody else have a thought?
Yeah, I definitely think that printing them as Polaroids is actually a really, really good choice. I mean, the image itself is really kind of fun and interesting, and has a lot of character in it. But I think as Polaroids, it just kind of, and also even side by side, with the two different kind of tones, having it in black and white and then in color, I think just adds to the I guess artistic quality of the image.
The color in the Polaroid is really nice. Those colors are very interesting. Now, so is that how true do you think? How true is that color in the Polaroid?
So I would say it's like relatively like very like warm tone in the Polaroid. It's definitely not as like yellow in the bathroom. I think it definitely has more of a white light, but I kind of like that it gives it that kind of like feel to it of like film almost.
So I mean, so you didn't manipulate the Polaroid color wise?
No, I didn't.
Okay, you know, because so with that, which Polaroid camera are you using? Or you're
So
using a printer? You're using a printer.
yeah.
Okay, because you know you can manipulate. I don't know if you've tried that at all, manipulating the Polaroid while it's developing.
No, I haven't.
So you can manipulate it. There's a couple of different ways you can manipulate it, but by temperature wise, if you well, it's because does it take like about what 2 minutes for it to get true color to like where it's maxed out?
Yeah, I would say about 2 minutes.
If you use your body temperature like in your hand and you rub it constantly, that can actually change a little bit of the appearance of the color. And then you can use like a stylist pen while it's developing, and you can actually with pressure, if you wanted to create like patterns or draw an outline or create different effects with the stylus, you can actually do that on the Polaroid while it's developing. So it's sort of fun to play around with that. But I think I love that side by side. That's fantastic. I love that. Really nicely done. And it sort of is. And I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of in sort of the history of photography, because there was a photographer who specialized in Polaroids, and this goes back like into somewhat the original Polaroid 4x5, because they had a Polaroid back that we could put in a 4x5 camera, and so the Polaroid itself was much larger and you could really manipulate it. And this photographer experimented a lot with Polaroids back in the 70s. But I think that's a really good solution for the concept of reflection. And all of these actually are really successful, where I believe if you showed anybody outside of this class, they would have no clue that your assignment was to go shoot reflection. They would just look at your photo and be absorbing what you did photographically, conceptually. So I think those are all really, really successful. It was a really good job. So I hope you enjoyed that, because that the whole point of that is to get you to be thinking about coming up with solutions to create an interesting photograph by using sort of a key word. And that's an alternative way of coming up with a concept. And I'm not sure how all of you went about your sort of creative process of finding the solutions, because people do it differently, where maybe some of you just sort of walked around your location and finally saw something that interested you, or maybe you sat down and thought about it and then went to see if you could find something that would work. But either way, you all came up with really good solutions for that. So good job. Mission accomplished. I hope you enjoyed that too. All right, so I think that's going to do it for us tonight. And I'll create an assignment for your in-class assignment that you just did, and then you can upload the images to that. And like I said, we're gonna probably do these, we've got what, I think four more class meetings before our final class meeting, or no, I think we have, yeah, 4 more class meetings. So our last class meeting will be of your final project. So for the next 3 meetings, we'll probably be doing something similar to what we did tonight, where you wind up doing an in-class assignment that will be sort of sprung on you, and see what kind of results you get on that. All right, anybody have any questions? All right, well, good job on that. All right, so you all have, everybody have a good evening and good job.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. See you guys next week. Okay, see you later.
All right, bye-bye.